As a disclaimer, some of our episodes discuss topics that may not be fit for a younger audience. Some episodes also contain some swearing. This show was produced by the Geek Happy Network, creators of the very best in audible oracle entertainment. If you enjoy listening to Represented, remember to subscribe and leave us a review on your favorite podcast app. We'd love to hear your thoughts.
Geek Happy Network.
She said, well, we're going to Thailand and then Japan. And I said, I'll meet you there with the camera.
Wow.
Yeah, and like they were like, what?
Yeah, it's really...
Yeah, so that's pretty much how easy it can be. We didn't have an idea of the script. A month later, we had a script, and
Wow.
we had another actor come on board who was going there anyway. Yeah, and is a great actor, so we wrote around him. And yeah, we just filmed all over Japan while we, ate ramen. So it was a really fun time. It's working on it.
Hello and welcome to the Represented podcast. I'm your host, Nix. Excited to have another guest with me today in the studio. I met Phil not too long ago, again through Mick. Shout out to Mick, introducing me to awesome creatives in Vancouver.
Yeah, Geek Happy Network.
For sure. It's good to have you here. And we met a few days ago and had a bit of a conversation.
Yeah,
and
great conversation about art and representation and just working, and finding your passion and being creative. Yeah.
And this podcast is a manifestation of what you just said, because that's what I'm trying to do for my own life.
Absolutely.
And basically what we discuss is life in general, people's journeys, and also I'm very interested in your journey personally as a creative in what you do and how you've kind of brought yourself to this point. What is this point? All that good stuff.
Oh, sure.
But we can start with the basics, going all the way back.
All the way back.
Yeah. So, were you born and raised in Vancouver?
I was born and raised in Vancouver.
Okay.
I did live in Richmond proper. And, I went to a local private school, Catholic school for boys called Vancouver College for 11 years. Okay. And I think from the beginning, I was always drawing and, doodling, sketching. And then as I got older, I took a real interest in videography and photography and, kind of mixed medium. And then taking art classes, also desktop publishing and working on the school newspaper and laying it out and playing with, programs to lay it out and, yearbook kind of stuff. And I think from there, I had a sense of what I wanted to do in terms of creatively. And I would make funny videos for my friends on VHS tape, editing from VHS to VHS, which is very painful if you've ever been through it.
Oh, I think you described this process before, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then what happened was when I got out of high school, I didn't really know a career path, because I think, when we talk about being represented, if you don't see, a family friend or, one of your parents' colleagues or that sort of thing, or a cousin, someone that you look up to, even just locally, let alone, movie stars or famous people or, a famous, Filipino Spielberg, I don't know any, right? And that sort of thing. You kind of had, I felt like I had no one to look up to. So that kind of representation, I was lucky my mom was like, just pick a school and go to it and then get a job. She didn't really care what career path I would take. She was just like, get a job doing something. So my mom was really cool that way. My dad was just like, whatever. He's like, get a job.
Yeah.
What happened was once I got out of high school, I was kind of floundering for a little bit. And then I found this new program at Vancouver Film School called Multimedia.
Okay.
And I was like, oh, that kind of sounds like the stuff I would do for, shits and giggles, at school, like just messing around with the computers and playing with the video cameras and the printing press and, painting and that sort of thing. And, I was like, oh, what is this Photoshop thing? I think when I went to school, which is way back when, we were on Photoshop version 3 or 2.
And we're on version what right now?
We're way past 10. So, yeah, it's pretty funny. And, we were using these Pentium computers and these really old Macs. But, it was still like, it's not the tool, it's the creativity that you used for the tool. And that's what I learned.
Yeah. Can I ask, what were some of the... So at that stage where you're kind of just messing around with different things, are there signs around you that, aside from, let's say, finding the software and stuff, like, are there other people in your family maybe who kind of gave you that inkling of, this creativity thing?
Yeah, at the time, not really. A lot of my, being of Filipino heritage, a lot of my relatives, a lot were nurses or, very practical type jobs and not, in creative positions so I could talk to or ask questions. And that's one thing I learned, especially, mentoring younger filmmakers, now that I'm a filmmaker, is really important because, they don't necessarily know where to turn or where to start, and I can just give them that little lift or head start. It's easy for me to do, so I try to do that a lot.
Awesome. And so, with your parents, I mean, you said your dad was kind of like whatever, but your mom, how much support did she give you in terms of pushing you to?
She was just like, to move on with your life, you have to just pick something and go with it. And, my mom was, for herself, she moved out when she was very young and got a job right away. And, she didn't think about it. She's just like, go to college and then get that job, and... then moved to Canada, which was, obviously very, risky back then, but she did it. And, with no support over here. And same with my dad, his, he got sent here by his family and they're like, just go do something. And that's what he did.
Oh,
and,
really?
Yeah.
What do you, was your dad messing up back home?
No, it's just... back in the Philippines, it's just hard to make a living, just like any country
any third
overseas.
World
or even, Philippines, it's either extremely rich or, the divide between, income is very, very different.
Yeah.
It's
extremes.
Yeah, you could have a college degree but only make, $300 a month, and it's very, very difficult to get ahead, I guess. And so people saw, my dad, he went to the States to check it out, and then they told him, check out Vancouver. So he borrowed some money from his aunt and flew over to Vancouver. And he eventually, did start a business selling jeans.
Oh, interesting.
After, working some odd jobs and getting, an accounting diploma. And, that was just out of him. He was truck driving, and he would see these warehouses where he would pick up stuff, and he's like, I can buy some of that stuff and sell it to my friends. He started the jeans company out of his basement.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah. Wow. So he would, sell, and my mom would also sell as well, on top of, she was a legal secretary. And, that was kind of, I always talk about the side hustle, anything creative, you got to have your side hustle that brings in, brings home the bacon.
1,000%.
Just to equalize, to help you pursue these creative projects. You work a job, and I work a job, and it's nothing wrong with that. That's how my parents did it. To open their first store, and then they eventually opened 2 stores, and then my uncle opened a store as well.
Nice.
So
and is it the same business they're in?
Yeah,
right now?
it was similar. They switched it over later. My dad got into manufacturing jeans, and and then he got out of it, and. The one thing I know from my parents is, you always have to have some sort of side hustle going on and finding, ways to make money. And, my dad would work 7 days a week, so, and, how I would bond with my dad is I would have to go with him to work on the weekend, or after school. And, that's something, that side hustle and that, work ethic I learned from my parents.
Yeah. Are there like other, considering you were born and raised in Richmond, and considering you have this knowledge of like your Filipino heritage and stuff, I'm just curious, how did that play into your life as a kid who knows he's Filipino but growing up in Canada, kind of a thing?
It's very interesting you bring that up. That's a great question. Growing up back in those days, especially during, I didn't really realize what Filipino meant until I got into, grade 1 or 2, 5 or 6 years old. I was on the playground one time, and, at that time, it was Vancouver was starting to get more mixed. So, there were some at our school, there was other Filipinos or Asian faces, and but there was also Caucasians that from an Irish background, second or third generation, or English or the British and that sort of thing. So it was a mix, but I'd be playing with the kids at the playground. They say, "Oh, you're not white," So,
oh wow, okay.
So that was like, oh yeah, I guess I'm not.
Yeah,
and that was like, they see themselves and they see each other, and then I'm playing with these kids, and they're like, "Oh, but you're not white," and they're just things kids say
for sure.
Innocently, but for me, it really made an impact, and changed my worldview even at that young age, and we would become cliques, in terms of I would hang out more with Filipinos or Asian as I was growing up. Just because we had that shared common culture, you must, feel that if you meet people from Kenya and that.
Like I find your specific story, which is a story I've kind of heard, obviously living in Vancouver. It's like I find it both interesting. I find it three things: interesting, cool, and kind of sad all at the same time. Because it's interesting because it's like seeing a young kid having to start negotiating those things without them knowing, like just subconsciously, and then making the rational decision to click up, which is like, that's survival. That's, you have no choice at that stage to be like, oh, I understand that this is just, that, it's just kind of like...
You find your tribe, and it is kind of sad. I mean, I think parents now are much more open-minded and less gender boundaries. There's... like people are trying to create a more open environment and have their kids be more open-minded and not have biases or see color, which they've always been trying to do. It's just, I think now a lot of millennial parents, they're more open-minded and thinking forward, which is great, but in that age, even my wife, she was the only Chinese girl in her school, and she would get made fun of for being Chinese, and it's different now. Like you go to the same school, it's probably 85% Chinese, so the demographics are changing too. So it's weird for me because, especially when I see, I have a lot of friends who are from, mainland China, and they experience racism in a different way, because sometimes look down on them because they have, money, but they're coming here and investing, and I don't necessarily, want to look down on someone because of that, because I think our economy would have had a rough time.
Had it not been for the investment.
Yeah, for the investment. But, at the same time, it's harder for local people to get ahead, and buy a place and that sort of thing. But, like any growing city, I think Vancouver's going to have to go through some growing pains and figure out what it is.
It's really interesting because I think maybe I haven't spoken to enough people that were around for the transition of Vancouver. So, like, around what year would you say things kind of really start? It was like obvious, like, whoa, things are changing.
Oh, that's a good question. There's kind of two phases. When I was graduating, probably, the early 90s, there was a lot of people coming over from Hong Kong. Okay. So that was one phase, and it caused a lot of growth in Vancouver, which was great. But it was still affordable, but it was a lot of more Asian businesses and Chinese people coming in, and then soon later also there were a lot of Taiwanese people as well. I would have Taiwanese classmates, I remember. And, it was just they were on a different level, sometimes economically, not every single person, some are just like my parents, regular working class immigrants. And, but, there were people who were investing in Vancouver and here to stay and have their kids grow up here. And so that was kind of the first phase. It did change the face of Vancouver, I think, in those early 90s. And then later, after I lived through the .com boom, the prices crashed and real estate was very, inexpensive at the time, very inexpensive. You could buy a house for, in the heart of Vancouver, central Vancouver, for $500,000.
Wow.
Like a four-bedroom house with a basement suite for, right beside a park.
Wow.
You could never do that now.
Oh my God,
right?
that's never going to happen. Maybe $5 million now?
Yeah, probably. Yeah, I've seen in the same area where I looked, and it was, probably $4 million. But what happened, I think, there was a real, I guess, big rush of people immigrating over from mainland China. And I feel like that was around, I'm going to say 2011, 2012-ish.
Okay.
When it first started, because, I do watch real estate, and I did notice, like, the prices are getting higher, and it's not stopping.
Yeah.
And people were like, it's going to slow down. I was telling people you should buy a condo now. I think it's going to go crazy.
Wow. Yeah.
And that was back in 2012 when I was looking at condos that were, 400,000.
Yeah.
Same thing is probably 600, 800, a million,
What are you going through personally with your development? Moving on from like the playground, you kind of already started your clicking up. So I'm assuming by the time you're a teenager, it's like Filipino squad, and you guys are doing your thing.
We really did have a Filipino squad. I have a group of friends from high school through college, and there's about 15 of us.
Wow.
And and then of course the respective partners that they ended up marrying and that sort of thing. And we just do things. We would go through experiences through their college years, like camping and dating and going clubbing and that sort of thing. And really we were very cliqued up because we were mainly Filipino, some Chinese and a few Caucasian fellows.
And at this stage, is there tension amongst other teens, or like at this stage is it kind of like everyone kind of understands?
No, at that age, what we realize is like together we're stronger. So. And also, we could still get along with, other cliques or other groups that were around us, especially in high school, like probably in the last few years of high school, we were like, they have their thing, but we have our own thing, and we can exist, and we can be happy. We don't have to hang out with them. And then same with college, just, meeting people. And, as we got out of college, we realized, actually, there's a thing called networking. We should know those people. Yeah. So... just meeting old schoolmates, and it doesn't matter what race or whatever, and just running into them and, learning how to network and the importance of that. And who is more important sometimes than what you know. For sure.
And how is your artistic side developing as well in terms of your film and stuff like this?
Yeah, at that time I started to look into, filmmaking. At the time I was doing a lot of web design because that was really, really hot, .coms and... that sort of thing. And but I was kind of bored, I was learning new things about design, but I got kind of complacent and very restless. And you might feel that in other jobs too.
And we spoke about my old job, or the job I did just before the one I'm doing now, and just like how I reached a point of not knowing myself and just losing everything I liked about my life and stuff, and just like needing that change for sure. So I definitely relate.
Yeah, because you can stay in those jobs, and
you can make it work.
You can make it work for sure, and you can make a living, and you can buy a place, and have a nice car. But I think there will be always something missing. and it takes away time and energy from being creative. That's what I've learned over the years. You know, I've had the opportunity to do different types of creative jobs. And kind of on my journey to filmmaking, I hit photography, and I was like, oh, I'm actually really interested in this. So
it felt more like...
Yeah, it's like, there's stories you can tell with photos. So I was like, okay. So
what was that moment that, do you remember, like, was it when you bought a camera, or was it...
You know, it was really just looking at, you know, for graphic design, you know, when I was in graphic design, I'd look for inspiration in photographs. And I was like, I want to take photos like this. And then, you know, it was really one of my first big trips to New York. And then I was like, okay, I got to have a camera.
Sweet. Yeah.
I'm going to New York.
For sure.
I have to have a camera.
Yeah.
And, you know, I'm going to the Met, you know, and going to look at fantastic art. And, you know, I just got really interested. I'm like, oh, you know, like, I don't think I want to take painting, but photography sounds like a course I could take. And so I took photography, and I finished that, and I made a switch to photography full-time. And I still had some side hustle, you know, just like little jobs.
What was your side hustle? What were some of your side hustles?
You know, graphic design or web design. And, you know, I just keep, you know, a few of those going on. And, you know, I invested in camera equipment.
Nice.
And, you know, ran a photography company. You know, we did probably like 250,000 photos a year, you know, and traveling across Western Canada. But as what happens, you know, I was so focused on the business end, it became a business. And, you know, just the regular rigmarole of running a business became kind of uninspiring, you know, and like taking the photos even became uninspiring because I had it. It's like wedding photography in a way. I was doing event photography.
How many years did you do before you got to that point where you felt like...
You know, it was like, I think probably I hit like a 2-year mark.
It's funny. I watched a video just yesterday where, I don't know if you know the singer called Mike Posner.
Okay.
Yeah. So he had a Vivo video where he spoke about how every 2 years he feels the need to like change
I totally get that.
Yeah, and for him, like, he was basically talking about how he had the hit single not too long ago about, what was the hit single? I forgot the name, but not too long ago he had a hit and he became the guy with the hit. Yeah. And so he notices every time he has those moments, he needs to just like,
walk
when
away.
He starts buying into the story of who he is at that time, it's like, okay, nah.
Yeah. I totally get that. You know, before photography, I did 2 years in Seattle just doing graphic design essentially, and I built a system, and we would use it for clients, and I just got burnt out, and I was bored. You know, I was like, I remember one time even, you know, doing graphic design, I got offered a job, and I was still pretty young at the time for, you know, a good amount of money, and the recruiter said to me, he said, "You don't want this job? It pays so well." And I said, "I'm just not interested." And the client, I'm not interested at all. You know, and I think I would be bored. So why, you know, I'd be doing them a disservice by taking that job just for the money.
Exactly.
So
because you're not gonna be at your best.
I'm not gonna be at my best. I'll get sick of it, and I'm wasting their time, them training me and learning about their products and that sort of thing.
Exactly.
So that's what I've kind of learned is there is a threshold. You know, once you feel that, you should walk away, or at least always have some sort of side project, creative projects on the side. And that's how I got into film. I was doing side projects of film. And I took cinematography courses at film school just because they were 50% off.
Oh, cool.
And they don't have that anymore. But I took a cinematography course, you know, and we shot on film and, you know, learned how to splice on film. And I was really fascinated, and I was like, it's not quite there yet. You know, if it's more digital, it'd probably be easier. But, you know, those kind of side projects, and then eventually I found a film contest at Vancouver Asian Film Festival, and they do it, you know, every couple of years, and you basically make a film in 10 days. And I was like, oh, that sounds really fun. And at the time, I had just bought a digital video camera, Panasonic DVX 100, which a lot of geeks know. It was one of the first kind of film-looking video cameras. But still not even high definition. You know, it's really, you know. But, you know, I was like, oh, it looks so cool, you know. So I was like, let's do a contest. And so we did a couple contests and little short films, myself and my friends who were interested in film, actors, and directors, and I was the director of photography.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened was I kind of, it turned a switch, you know, so I was like, but at the time I still didn't know any Asian filmmakers. So I was like, oh, I don't know if there's a job in this. I don't know if there's a career in this.
So even just to give yourself the confidence to say, like, this is a possible thing.
I held back, and that was, you know, looking back, that was like, gosh, like 2003. And, you know, even though I loved it, I just didn't see a career in it. So I kept on doing, you know, photography, and then eventually I actually got out of photography after getting burned out, you know, and just helped my wife in her family business. And and then, you know, I always say there's always like a turning point as you will get older, and maybe other listeners will get older. When you hit your 30s, and, you know, there's a time when you know, and it's, for me, I think it's usually a death in the family. And that makes you realize, you know, what am I really doing with my life, and what is, you know, because it forces you to stop. You can't stay in the same pattern, you know, like you have to stop for a moment and celebrate someone's life, right? And then also you have time to reflect on
think about your own. Yeah.
And so I've had that, and it's weirdly always coincided when I've been making films. You know, like I either finish a film, like when my dad had a heart attack, I had just finished a film for a contest. And, you know, another time, my mother-in-law had passed away. And, you know, those times especially when my mother-in-law passed away, I looked, you know, at her life, and I looked at my life, and I'm like, wow, she did so much more than I did. And, you know, what am I doing here? You know, just, you know, making good money, helping the family business, but not doing anything outside of that, anything creative, you know, like, you know, and she used to run a dance company on the side as a project. And, you know, she had a regular job as a teacher, and, you know, she would, all her weekends, all her spare time would be like making costumes or, you know, teaching or hiring dance teachers, you know, and just consumed her. You know, and, you know, over the course of, you know, 30, 40 years, she had taken this dance group around the world to 35 countries.
Wow.
You know, like, you know, how many people can say they have that legacy? You know, I looked over at my life, I'm like, man, I haven't done anything like that, you know? So it took me, you know, a few moments, and then I said, you know what, I'm going to go back to school and something related to film, because I think that's what I want to do.
How long did you spend in that mind space of, nah, maybe I shouldn't?
I would say, gosh, the really hesitation was even from 2003 to 2010.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was quite a long time. Because I would do the contests, you know, every few years, or help out.
So you're kind of in it still,
but very loosely, and not very committed. You know, I kind of, at one point I said, you know, just take my camera, you know, and you do it, I don't want to do it. You know, and I missed it, you know, and I would always go and watch, and I'd be like, oh, I should have helped on that. So there's this gap of years where I was like, so focused on, you know, it sounds cliche, but so focused on material things, you know, and like focus, I gotta get this, and those things, you know, again, cliche, it doesn't really necessarily make you happy. And, you know, I had no creative outlet, so you just, you kind of become like, you know, like a straight line instead of like with peaks and valleys in terms of your creative patterns.
100%.
Yeah.
For me, like my most immediate experience right now with that has been every day so far since I like started this new journey of mine has been different. Like every day, it never works out exactly the same. Whereas before, it was literally like I could map each day onto each other. Like,
and it's like a template. It's a template. Every day's a template.
The same. From eating to sleeping to writing to anything. Anything I'm doing is just like...
you know, I remember at my one corporate job I worked in Seattle, I even had my 15-minute breaks mapped out, and also when I would drink my protein shakes.
Oh my God.
You know, like on my schedule. Someone saw it and laughed at me, and I was like, this is kind of lame. But yeah, it becomes like a template, and you're not stimulated anymore. That's what I realized. I don't know for other people, but you need, creative outlets. And I actually, oh man, this is when I realized that I was doing something wrong, but didn't know what to do about it. I was surfing the web, because work was easy. I could get my work done in 2 hours of the day, and there just wouldn't be clients, but they would keep you around.
Exactly.
They keep you around. Yeah, right.
Hours,
yeah, you're there for 8 hours.
Yeah.
And I actually halfway through the day, I got sick of looking at the internet.
Same.
And I was just like, this sucks.
Yep.
And I was like, I'm getting paid a lot of money to sit.
Yes.
And I'm like, I should be doing something, but
1,000%.
But I don't know what I should be doing.
Exactly.
So, and
that's exactly where I was 4 more months ago. Like, literally, my days would be spent Facebooking and Instagram, and it's just like, and what made it worse was that one of my tasks at the office, which was like not really part of my job description, but something I would help with, was social media. So I would be on Instagram, Facebook all day. Like, I didn't want to look at Instagram for the longest time because I was just so it's like, that's so real, and I know so many people out there are still going through it right now, even maybe listening to this,
definitely.
So,
even so, what happened when I, my mother-in-law passed away was, I said, after, a great deal of stress and reflection, and, I looked at, what I really liked to do, and I was like, I think filmmaking, like, it always kind of, calms me down, and I have fun, and, I've had a little success at it, locally, and my curiosity was always there. I didn't know enough about it. So I was like, if that seems kind of scary or, unknown, that's probably where I should go, and because I don't know what that is, but I like it. So headed that way. And what happened was I didn't want to go to film school because I knew it was something I could probably learn on set, and I didn't know what role I would be, but I knew I was good at computers. So I was like, okay, well, visual effects kind of seems like Photoshop, so I was like, I'll try that. So I went back to school at Vancouver Film School 20 years later. Wow. From the first time I went. And did visual effects program, with all these 20-year-old kids. So one was 18.
What was that experience like?
It's
because I went to university, and I would have some classmates who are like much older, and I would be like, wow, how is this for them? I'll be honest, when a bunch of teenagers walk onto the train, I get anxiety. So for me, I'm just imagining like you have to learn with a bunch of young people.
I guess I'm fortunate. We have a joke like, I'm Filipino, and we have a joke, Asians don't raisin. So a lot of people were surprised how old I was.
Yes.
And, I learned by adapting. I actually would wear, more runners and, dress, whatever I look in my closet, that's kind of what the kids are wearing today, and dress a little bit more hip-hop or more casual. Not my old work clothes, right? Fortunately, I didn't have to dress up in my later years of family business, but I felt like I could actually bring value. So that's, I guess, comes with maturity and age and experience. So, I would organize parties or organize, events, and I would take people out to lunch, cool. Kind of teach them about networking. I'm like,
that's awesome.
Listen, even if you can't afford, a fancy meal, you can take anyone out for coffee and buy them a coffee, and they'll remember that. And so I would try to teach that and impress that. And, I'd tell my coworkers, I'm like, guys, we're going to be, in 5 years, you're going to be a senior designer. You're going to be a senior compositor. You're going to be a senior 3D guy. Keep this network strong. So we actually did. And it was great because I met people from around the world that I still keep in contact with, and a lot of them actually settled down in Vancouver, so we still see each other, and they actually help me on my films, which is great.
That's awesome.
And but it was definitely like adapting to. But I remember the first time I brought my son, he was about 2 or 3 at the time. Like, you have a son? How old are you? I'm like, I'm a little bit older than you. And you know, like a lot of these younger guys would work, you know, through the night, and I'm like, I can't do that. I gotta go home and sleep.
Yeah, you got a kid.
Yeah.
And so, speaking of now film, in terms of we've spoken about your personal development. How about film in general from when you were a kid, if you remember? Film in Vancouver, what has that landscape been like over the
Yeah,
time?
you know, I think BC's always been like a service industry, and I still see that now. It's just bigger, much, much, much bigger. Like, you know, 1 or 2 TV series that you would know about, and then 1 or 2 films, big films coming here. I think with the advent of digital technology, you get to see now a lot of productions coming up here for TV series, especially with the, you know, the golden age of Netflix and streaming. A lot of productions can get made up here and then also done VFX here. So all the major VFX companies open branches here, and that's what I ended up working on, a show called Once Upon a Time, and among others. And you know, they were just so busy and are still busy, you know, with these, you know, even big Marvel movies get made here, and so it is a big service industry now, like much, much bigger. The pace is very fast, and they hire fast, and then they need to get the product out fast. It's almost like becoming a little factory, you know, VFX factory, and then also, you know, a TV production factory out here. You know, any given time, it sounds like there's like a dozen shows shooting here, or Hallmark movies, Lifetime movies, which, you know, they all bring money to the economy.
And how long have you been doing film now for?
I graduated from visual effects in 2012, and from there I started working right away on visual effects for basically I could call it a year, a season. So it's been about six years now. Yeah, about 6 years.
And how have you avoided the 2-year thing we talked about? Because you had 3 opportunities there.
Yeah, so what I did was first do visual effects, and I said, okay, I'll do 1 contract just to see, you know, and feel it out and see if I, you know, even am interested in visual effects, even though I know, you know, I'm pretty sure I'm going to leave it. But I figured, you know, I want to make some cool science fiction movies. I think that needs visual effects, so I should know about it. So at the same time, I would make a short, my first sci-fi short, with one of my schoolmates, and you know, I would learn on set. You know, that was my other school. That was my other film school, and just learning, you know, how to run a set and how things get produced, and you know what you need to make things happen, and you know, just figuring out the nuts and bolts of working on set. And I was like, oh, I like working on set. So that kind of pulled me away from, you know, sitting in front of the computer, you know, fixing green screens and stuff. And I was like, oh, okay. So I was still doing that. I was like, I'm reaching my threshold. I can walk away now.
So you're kind of now, your thresholds are within the same space now. Yeah. Because you love the general space within.
Yeah, within the film industry, I guess.
You don't feel like just pulling the rug from under you anymore. You know? Yeah,
you know, through a friend, I got into a big Hollywood movie that shot in Montreal, and it was still visual effects, but it was being on set on a big movie, and I just, you know, treated that as a learning experience. I'm like, you know, I don't think I'm young enough to go through the whole process and work my way up, you know? Okay. And that was the same with visual effects. So there's no way I was going to work my way up. I was not as interested in visual effects or sitting in front of a computer for, you know, 12 hours straight or whatever. And I liked just standing on set and running around and getting things done. What happened was, after I did that big on-set Hollywood experience, I was like, you know, and there were Hollywood stars, and there was, you know, big cast and crew, and I was like, I don't need all this stuff. I don't need to make all this, you know, like, you know, I guess almost like, you know, how a lot of podcasters like yourself, you can just do it. I want it to be like that. Yeah. I wanted to take control and make my own stuff and make my own content. And not rely on too many people. You know, you still need people sometimes. For sure. But, you know, you can do it with, like, a cell phone. You know, you can learn your craft. And
it's leaner. Like, it's a leaner way of kind of just...
Yeah, you know, I don't need that big Hollywood dollar money. You know, I would love it. I would love it. I'm not saying no. Send me some money, Hollywood.
If anyone's listening.
If anyone's listening. But what it really comes down to is just getting the chance to be creative in your daily life somehow. So, yeah.
And what are some of the things that keep you creative right now? What are some of the ways you keep yourself in that space?
What happened after that was, I did a series of short films, either directed, produced, mostly produced, wrote a little, and also did different roles, like producing, sometimes, being the cameraman myself or DOP.
Okay.
And just trying different, sound guy. I even did sound guy. I did editing, you know, and I would just try each role and, also shadow people and, work on other people's sets just to get an idea of what it was about. And the other flip side of that was going out into, I guess, mainstream Vancouver film industry. That was a big eye-opener because, I had only worked in my little Asian film festival clique. Again, I was attaching, as I was going into the safety of the Asian film festival clique, and which is fine. I still support them, and still go. But there's also, kind of the bigger world, of, the bigger pond that you can swim in, which was, meeting other filmmakers that, were from, UBC Film or VFS or Capilano College and all these different film schools, and that were working in the industry, and seeing how they work and what their processes were and how I can apply that to my own work. And that's been probably the most interesting thing as a filmmaker, is like working with other producers, actors, filmmakers, and seeing how they work and seeing what I can take out of that for my own stuff. And then also still making my own little films for fun, and still, entering, that tiny little contest and making something and see what happens. Right? Yeah.
That's pretty cool. And so with like all that film talk and producer and writing and all that, I remember I had asked you when we first met, when you're making a film, like what is it that what are you trying to do when you make movies, and what does it take to make a movie?
Oh, okay. Yeah, that's great question.
Yeah.
What I'm trying to do when I'm making films is just have people feel something and have myself feel something. So when you see images on screen and sound and feeling the movie, I want them to have a reaction, and maybe they don't like it, maybe they love it, just don't be too ambivalent about it, so trying to get better at that. And
may I ask why that's important to you?
That's important because I think, when you're being creative and, for me, you do want an audience. I mean, even you as a podcaster, you want people to listen, and you want people to feel something. Like when I watch something or hear something or consume something, or read, I'm attached to certain types of writers or certain types of content, and I feel something. So that to me is like, oh, okay, I have to push this to, show, share my creativity, and then also, hopefully people have a reaction, like it, or, and maybe follow it, or, because they can connect or understand that product or film that I've made. Yeah. So, and then the second part of the question
was, how do you go about making a movie yourself?
So for me, the process has been, long, but through a lot of experimentation. I think you just have to do, and that's the biggest thing, I've learned from people in my life, is just head that way, and everything else will follow, and don't necessarily set goals, like set a fixed goal of I need, for example, in this podcast, I need 1 million followers. Don't worry about that. Just make it good.
Just create.
Just create and make it as good as you can at the time, and then get better with each one and learn through that. Each project you do, I take something away, and I learn and I learn and I learn.
And so, now, in a practical sense, then, how would you conceptualize a film? Do you sit down and spend hours on a laptop just typing scripts away, or do you have someone that helps you with that and then you do something else?
Yeah, a little bit of both. Actually, for me, I like to go for drives.
Okay.
And I work on for example, dialogue or visuals in my head while I'm driving.
Okay.
Yeah, and I find that's really because I can kind of, I don't know for everyone, but when I'm driving, I kind of go into this weird, hypnotic state, zone, and then I can just think about film sometimes and run a scene over and over into my head.
Yeah. Is there a specific place you like to drive?
Just anywhere. Okay. It could be anywhere. Sometimes I go too far.
Okay.
I drive to the wrong.
The risk
I have driven to the wrong place while coming up with a great idea, or maybe a not so great idea. But yeah, I just like to drive and kind of think about things and definitely outline. I do go on the computer and outline ideas or jam things on my phone or look for images that kind of represent what I want to do. And then when I collaborate, which is pretty much 100% of the time, I meet with other writers and see what they send me a version of the script, and I might give them some feedback or talk to them with some ideas, or we workshop the script, have someone read it and then hear it and then say, okay, this works, this doesn't work. Or sometimes I'm a little bit removed. I'll say, I'll get you the people, the team. Yeah, I'll get you a story editor. I'll get you a storyboarder.
Would that make you a producer then?
That's more where I end up in the producing end, which is a lot of times these days. But still, have a little bit of a hand in the creative elements. And I still feel when I'm working on a film, even as a producer, I still feel creative because I'm solving problems creatively. So that is, even if it's not to the story, it's like for you to get this location, you still need me to find you that place, and that looks good. And, and
you have to have the film in mind still.
You gotta have kind of some way of finding a place that will fit their vision, and hopefully they'll be able to work with what you get them. So yeah.
And for like a younger person out there who maybe like is in college right now, doesn't have a DSLR, just has a smartphone and a laptop, and he really wants to tell a story too. What would be your advice to that person to like get a movie going or a short film? Or do you know of any resources
lots of start on a phone and then or buy a small used camera. There's so many of them, like a Rebel DSLR, or even some of the a filmmaker I believe in Thailand. His name's Kendi Tai. So KENDYTAI, and he uses one lens, one old camera, like a Rebel T2i, and he makes amazing footage. And now turn that into a job, a career as a filmmaker. So you don't need all the big toys, but you do need to make things. Like you need to practice, and you don't need to show everything. You can make it for yourself. You can shoot on your phone. You can test it. You can meet with actors. I think that's the big thing, is like getting into the community, find other like-minded people and working with them and experimenting. Like, do those experiments. Don't be afraid to try. If you to me, you only fail if you don't try at all. If you don't try at all, then you're not going to have anything to show anyway. What
are some of the challenges that you've kind of had to overcome with being a filmmaker, more so in terms of your own capability as a storyteller? How have you developed? What are some of the ways you've had to shift or whatever?
The more I do films, I realize is how important, especially working with other filmmakers and producing them. And one of the reasons I produce is so I can get better knowledge as a filmmaker. So I watch what they do and how they work and their process, and then I take things I need and I leave behind things I don't need. But yeah, the struggle for me, is getting those ideas on paper, writing it and then because I think I can execute it. It's being so precious with your ideas instead of just vomiting them all. Just get them all out. And then you can kind of go through with your friends and pick the best ones, right? And maybe there'll be something, way back there. Oh, that could have worked.
I can relate. Yeah.
It doesn't have to be perfect. You just have to get it all out, get every idea out, And that's what I've been kind of learning is like, okay, let's just throw a million ideas, see which works. Just, throw it all out, edit it down to what's good. You don't need everything. Don't be precious. Don't be like stuck on one idea, and take other people's feedback, and don't be offended when they give you feedback.
Yeah.
Because
that's a tough one.
That's a tough one.
Yeah.
But for me, even for myself, I give feedback. And, I was working with some young filmmakers, mentoring for the Asian Film Festival in Vancouver. And, I still try to be careful, but I'm like, do you want my honest opinion or do you want me to pat you on the back kind of approach, And, the smart ones will, take whatever critical feedback and kind of incorporate that hopefully in, for example, editing, after they've shot it, I'm like, no, that doesn't work. I had one filmmaker said, do you think this is good enough to pitch? And I'm like, no, it's not. This is not professional enough. And I don't mean that in, to disappoint them, or hurt them. But, like what I usually do is I say, look at this film, look at your film. These guys got money, and their film still hasn't been made. So, do you think you have a chance?
Of yours getting made,
I'm not saying you shouldn't try, but make it look as good as this. Keep polishing. Like that's. I think when you get on a professional level, especially in visual effects, what I learned is they're very critical. They analyze every shot every day. They call it dailies, and they look at the dailies of the artists, until they run out of budget, and they're like, okay, that's not good. Kind of a Pixar methodology. They build it up over time. They look at it as a sketch. They look at it as a rough animation. They look at it with sound, and they keep adding layer upon layer upon layer, and then they keep trimming away until it's polished into that Pixar film look.
Yeah. Who was the person when you were coming up as a filmmaker, who was that? Did you have one person or a few people that kind of gave you those reality checks?
Yeah, definitely. I have some good friends in the industry who, I show my films to, and they'll say, it doesn't work. And I have one friend who's not even in the film industry, but he has good taste. Okay. And he's like, that part of the story doesn't work, Phil. Take it out. And, I like to I'll send things out, and sometimes I won't even post it anywhere online. I'll just have it sit for a while, and then let it ferment and figure out where it can look better, or and go and reshoot if I can and have the budget to do so. But a lot of times it's just people you trust, your circle around you, and then also people in the industry that are maybe a little bit higher than you or have a bit more experience. And so I sold a film. Produced and sold a film. It's on Netflix now. It's called Beyond Redemption.
Oh, cool.
It's a little B action movie we made with a bunch of friends for fun.
Oh, sweet.
And, it's not great. Okay. I'll be perfectly honest. Like, that's what the critical me. There's lots of problems with it. But, like I always say, it's my little piece of junk. And we did something with it. But see, when I'm very personally attached to it, because it was like a pet project, right? But I showed the trailer to a Hong Kong film director I know, who's been in the industry for many like decades, like probably 4 or 5 decades. He's like, oh, you kind of hid some stuff in the editing there. I'm like, yeah. And he's like, oh, he would give me honest feedback. He was still pretty gentle, I think, but it's good to get that elder statesman looking at your work and giving you eyes that you don't have, and telling you, because even if the film is done, and what I notice is when films are done, that's when people can criticize, right? It's harder to bring them on early to analyze, because people just don't have time, especially people who are in the industry, which is that's the thing. Fix it as early as possible in the script and the organization. Fix that as early as possible. As a producer, I try to fix things before they happen. You can't always, but I kind of look at, okay, you need one more day to shoot this, otherwise we're just wasting our time, wasting our money, wasting people's time. Let's fix it, before we even bring up the equipment. Let's get organized.
fixing, because when you said fixing, this came up in my head. Not because you will fix it, but like representation. That's something we talked about when we first met, and I think that was something you said that's really important to you.
Yeah,
as you're trying to tell your stories. Yeah. Why is representation very important to you?
It's very important because as I said, growing up, I didn't see a lot of Asian characters, let alone Filipino characters. That had, roles of substance. They might be, the Chinese chef or, the Filipino nurse or
the best friend.
The best friend, not even the best friend, maybe the, the third best friend.
Yeah.
And, or, you look to Asian culture, they expect you, as an actor, it's an asset as an actor that's Asian to have martial arts, right? So. Cliche, right?
Yeah.
But what I realized was, like not seeing that, when I started making my own films, I would fall to those cliches, so I did like my first film was like a little, action, kung fu action movie. And we would just prey into those cliches, which is fine.
Yeah.
It's like you got to take, get that out of your system, right? And have fun. And we did. But, what happens as you mature, I find, and get older, you're like, oh, actually, I want to see a film where two people fall in love and one of them happens to be Asian. Maybe the other person's black or is, Latino or any other culture, like a mix of cultures. And I did a film where I had a group of Asian, Asian professionals sitting in a bar, and I was like, oh, I've never done this before, and it was really interesting to me. And then in the same movie, I had a romantic scene between the Asian leads, and I asked the actor afterwards, how do you get into the mindset of that, kissing a stranger and that sort of thing? What's your process? Just curious, over coffee. And he's like, Phil, I've never got to do a scene like that before on film. And I was like, wow, there's no opportunity for these young, talented Asian actors to grow. I mean, they have to grow as artists. They have to experience more and get more experience on film. And for me, that's why I still do, a lot of films with, the Asian actors I know, even for fun. But to me, that's how I can help, the community grow, Asian filmmakers, Asian actors, and even behind the scenes, how it ties into my own personal growth is like I never saw or knew anyone in the film industry of all, the people I know growing up that were Filipino descent or even Asian descent. So I had no one to talk to and say, hey, what is this job? In your family, you might know someone who is a doctor, and you can watch him. Oh, he went to school for 8 years, and then he became a doctor. And if you see that, you might be interested in doing it, right? Or if you have an uncle who's a mechanic. But I never knew any filmmakers. So for me to mentor or let other people in the community, especially young Asian actors, filmmakers, writers, see myself and my other, kind of new Asian filmmaker clique, and we support each other, like have them see that, and then also get them on set, hey, you wanna help out? Yeah, come help out, no problem, and so then they have a place to look, not to look up to, because I'm not some fancy Spielberg type character, but at least like they can see, oh, there's someone else doing it, so there's no reason I can't do it.
It's like, let me pick up where he left off.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's really important for representation, like behind the scenes and in front of the screen. So I did this Crazy Eights film festival, which is one of the biggest contests in Vancouver, supported by a lot of the industry. You get a lot of free cameras and free props and cheap locations and that sort of thing, and you can get sponsors. And we ended up casting for the film called Gemini a great Filipina actress, Filipino-Canadian, named Donna Benedicto. And, you know, it was a nice meaty role. Like, you know, it was a lead role with lots of lines that I think a lot of actors would have loved to play. And it was just nice to see that she was perfect for the role. And, you know, people would get to see her, you know, in an audience, you know, of over 1,000 people, you know, live.
Yeah.
And that was a very proud moment for myself, you know, that we could share her talent, you know, and she's, you know, Asian just like me. And people will see that, and they'll just hopefully not see the color. They'll just see, oh, she's fantastic.
Yeah.
She's beautiful. She's dynamic, you know, and just...
Or she's normal.
Yeah, she's just like everyone else, right? You know, she's just a fantastic actress, you know? Not a fantastic Asian actress or, you know, that... Not... Less categorization, you know, let's take that away. But, you know, myself, I don't try to bang the diversity drum. I'd rather just do, you know, like... You know, you do a podcast called Represented. You're just doing it, right? You know, like...
Because it's we do, like, for us, it's, like I had mentioned to you, for us, it's a similar idea where we had our conversation behind, myself and Mick, behind starting this podcast came from a similar place where it's like, we find the value in all stories. Being immigrants, it's kind of like you have no choice but to understand everyone because you are like automatically not in the main group,
you're not in the mainstream.
Yeah,
you're not in
so it's kind of like we're like, oh, there's all these other cool stories. Why don't we show them off and represent them and stuff? And I think it's something. And interestingly enough, I think it's something that's really happening. Like the momentum was kind of picked up now, and I think
definitely.
You feel that way, right?
Yeah, with the you know, the success of, you know, films like Searching and, you know, Crazy Rich Asians, obviously, you know, being the, you know, number one romantic comedy in a decade. You know, like that's insane.
Wow.
You know, just seeing Asian leads in a regular kind of movie. You know, it's really kind of, there's a groundswell, you know, there's kind of a chain reaction, ripple effect, I think, going on.
And I'm very curious, like, in terms of Vancouver, I came into a Vancouver that was majority Asian, personally, when I moved here. And I've lived here for 6 years, so I'm wondering, how is it that, like, within the 6 years, it still feels as though maybe representation is still like it's still been an issue. So I'm wondering how in a place that is so, like, it's majority one culture, not one culture, but you know what I mean, like Asian.
Very Asian.
How
large.
is it that representation is an issue in a place like this?
You know, I think you know, the way that we can see more and or get it supported is like you know, diversity has to be on both sides. So it has to be, you know, in front of the screen, and then again, you know, behind the scenes. So more people going into those jobs and saying, no, that's not realistic. Why can't we have, you know, people of every race in this scene? You know, like not just, you know, one race or, you know, two race. You know, let's have, you know, the rainbow of cultures, right? Represented, right? And you need those people to champion behind the scenes, which I think is slowly happening. You know, definitely.
So it was more of like a behind the scenes issue. Yeah,
you know, like just getting people in more positions of power, or, you know, from diverse backgrounds in those writing rooms, for example, or in producers, right? I think that'll help. And then the other flip side of that is we need the audience to come and support.
For sure.
So like Crazy Rich Asians or Searching, and you know, like there was a chain reaction. Crazy Rich Asians came out, and then Searching came out, and a lot of people were like, oh, we should watch this other Asian movie, you know, Asian lead movie. Not that it's an Asian themed movie. It's not at all. It's like,
it just happens to have
you know, good Asian lead, good actor who happens to be Asian, which is what you want. But we need those audience to support, you know, like, oh, I love that actor and he happens to be Asian, and that's how you get more interesting voices, more interesting players on the screen. So, like, for us as an audience, we have to watch those movies. We have to go and support them, and, you know, almost through our ticket, you know, we have to support it. And then that's kind of the flip side, you know, we can get executives pushing for more diversity, but we need to support it.
Spend the money.
We need to spend the money.
Yeah, because it always boils down to the same thing.
Yeah, you know, it's your dollar is your vote.
Yeah,
right. Your ticket is your vote.
Yeah.
So that's the only way we'll get represented. Yeah,
for sure. And so, like, right now, is there anything exciting that you're working on right now?
Yeah. So this. This October, I'm going to have probably a private screening of a feature I shot in the Philippines.
Oh, cool.
Which was very indie, but, you know, we worked with a great local crew in the Philippines, and it's a fantasy movie. So it's kind of based on Filipino mythology, but it's still a Canadian movie set in the Philippines.
Okay,
so
cool.
That's coming up, and... as well, our Crazy Eights movie, Gemini, is going to be showing at the Portland Film Festival.
Okay, cool.
October 22 to 28. And also I have a film premiering in November at the Vancouver Asian Film Festival.
Okay.
And we shot it in Tokyo with 5 people.
Wow.
Including 2 of them being actors and 1 of them director.
Okay.
So, yeah, we traveled around Tokyo and shot all over Tokyo with this tiny little crew. You know, I was holding the lights, you know, and the director was holding the sound, the co-director.
Oh, wow.
And the writer was also acting in it, you know, the co-writer. Yeah. So it was just the 5 of us traveling over Japan.
Wow.
And
why did you guys decide to just work with 5
You know
people?
what happened? We were at this film festival in Hollywood, and we had just won... Our film, Akashi, had just won Best Writing out of 4,000 films.
Wow.
So it's very impressive.
Yeah.
And we're very honored. And part of the prize was to meet executives, you know, and talk to them about your career. And they would ask us, what are you doing next? What's your next thing? You know, what do you have, you know, in your cabinet, you know, kind of thing. And we didn't have an answer because we hadn't thought that far ahead. We were just like happy to be there. Yeah. And I said to them before we had another meeting, I said, guys, you know, what are you doing this Christmas? You know, and they hadn't really thought about it. And my writer, director, actor, Mayumi Yoshida, she said, well, we're going to Thailand and then Japan. And I said, I'll meet you there with the camera.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and like they were like, what?
Yeah, it's pretty...
Yeah, so that's pretty much how easy it can be. We didn't have an idea of the script. A month later, we had a script, and we had another actor come on board who was going there anyway, and is a great actor, so we wrote around him. And yeah, we just filmed all over Japan while we, you know, ate ramen. You know? So it was a really fun time. It was like a working holiday.
That sounds awesome.
And, you know, we ended up with a 20-minute film, I was shocked because we had enough footage to make, you know, a fairly, you know, long piece of art, you know. But if you don't take those risks or take those jumps, we would have nothing this year.
Yeah.
You know? So it was nice to see that come together, and now it's going to be premiering here in Vancouver. So our friends are really curious. A lot of them haven't seen it. So I'm excited to show it.
That's awesome. And then you said there's the one on Netflix called what again?
Beyond Redemption. So that's still on Beyond Redemption. Okay. Give it a like.
Yeah.
It's a little grungy action thriller. We wrote it in a month and shot it right away because our friends were going off to work in Singapore. And we're like, oh, we got you. You can do crazy stunts, and you know, like, do you want to act? He's like, sure, you know. And
is there a movie that you feel like you really want to make that you haven't been able to get out?
There's a couple projects. You know, I have a lot of science fiction type projects that I know that are going to be expensive. But you know, I think that'll just come in time, and hopefully, as technology gets better and cheaper, and more people know the technology, then it'll be easier to execute or sell and that sort of thing. You know, we're just refining the pitches and getting, you know, learning how to write better pitches. That's been a long process too. Okay. And like, you know, there's a lot of things about distribution and marketing that you learn as you go. So there's no school necessarily.
What's involved with writing what is writing a pitch?
The pitch is like, I guess I could compare it to, if a lot of people work, with clients and they have to sell the clients, so they do a slideshow. That's kind of like a pitch.
Okay.
That's like we're doing a synopsis and a logline of what is this movie about in a slideshow.
Okay.
Right? How can we tell it in 10 slides?
Yeah. Wow.
And that's what we're getting slowly better at, but it's still, a process to learn.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your time and like giving us as much information as you've given us and sharing your story. Really appreciate you coming to the studio, and we aim to represent as many perspectives as possible, and thank you for sharing yours. Looking forward to like talking to you in the future about any cool stuff you do.
Definitely.
Yeah, we'll check you out. I believe you're on social media.
Yeah, if you can find me /Phil Planta on any platform. Awesome. And my website as well, philplanta.com.
Cool.
Yeah.
Nice. Awesome.
But thanks for having me. It's been great.
Awesome. Thank you very much, and peace. If you'd like to be a guest on the Represented Podcast, feel free to hit up at Represented Podcast on Instagram or email us at representedpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you for listening, and for more Geek Happy Network shows like the Monster Slayer's Guide to Slaying Monsters or partner shows like the Jay and Tay Show and Book and Bitch, come give us a listen at geekhappynetwork.com or look for us on your favorite podcast app. And be sure to follow us on Facebook or Instagram at Geek Happy Network. This show is hosted and created by myself, Nyx, editing by Robert Mudhama and myself, intro music by Mick Narciso.